Hello and welcome to Thought Leader Magazine. My name is Chris Carr. I run a digital marketing agency called Faratech. We're located just outside the city of Philadelphia. And today on Thought Leader Magazine, we have Mr. David Newman, who wrote the book, Do It Speaking. And you are also the president of Do It Marketing. Is that right?
That is absolutely correct, Chris. Thanks for having me on.
Yeah, this is wonderful. It's very rare when we have a scenario where I feel like we're going to have way more to talk about than the 40 minutes will allow. So I'm going to dive right in. Just some real quick specs. You graduated from Franklin and Marshall College with BA in Drama and English. Then you went to City University of New York, and you had an MFA in Theater and Stage Directing. You are married for 35 years now?
That's it.
Wow. And you have two kids, Becca and Charlie. And your first job out of college is you went to grad school you went from grad school to professional theater in New York at NYC to student teach at graduate school, and then you kind of got into the corporate world and stuff like that. How did that work? How did you go from drama school to...
Well, so the one missing element is me failing out of pre-med when I was at Franklin and Marshall.
Okay.
So I failed out of pre-med, switched to drama and theater, which gave my parents a heart attack, and then did professional theater in New York City for 4 years. Tough to make a living. A friend of mine said, well, while you're doing this graduate school teaching, you could do that for companies, and that's called corporate training, and maybe you can make a living at that.
That's awesome.
And that was my transition in 1992 to the world of corporate training and consulting.
Okay. This was 1996. I was a pre-med student and was failing calculus, and I was working as many hours as possible to get through calculus. And this is the funniest thing. My math teacher goes, why are you so into this calculus thing? Why do you got to do this? I was like, I'm pre-med. I need this. He goes, you're not going to be a doctor, man.
I wish I had gotten that advice earlier. I actually failed calculus, physics, and chemistry in the same semester.
Okay, great.
So definitely no medical advice here, folks.
It was probably
ask other people.
I just remember like it was probably the most uninspiring, honest moment I ever had. But looking back, I was like, he probably saved me thousands of dollars in time
and misery and alcoholism and suicidal thoughts and all kinds of terrible things.
Yep.
So good job not being a doctor.
That's awesome.
You and I have the same medical degrees.
Yep. So tell me a little bit about, first we'll talk about the company, then we'll talk about the book, and we'll talk about anything you really want to talk about. So tell me a little bit about how did this all happen? How did this start?
Well, so in 2002, I had this 10-year, from 1992 to 2002, 10-year corporate consulting, training, and speaking career, working for big management consulting firms and technology consulting firms. So I did some work for Microsoft. I did some work for, I was at a management consulting firm called Towers Perrin, which now is Towers Watson, or they've merged a couple times since then. And then I also worked for PeopleSoft before they were bought by Oracle. So all big tech, big management consulting. 2002 figured, hey, I know this business. I know how to speak. I know how to train. I know how to consult. How hard can this be? And Chris, you know how hard it can be
Yes.
because it's not about doing the work. It's about getting the work.
Sure.
So I set up my shingle in 2002. I was a total generalist. I had no niche. I had 30 different workshop topics. I figured, hey, if you don't want this, maybe you want that. Maybe, So I was literally doing everything: leadership, team building, presentation skills, communication skills, you name it. Took me 3 years to get my head screwed on straight, and I finally realized I have to be in a niche. I have to make a decision. I have to have a topic and a focus and an expertise. And this is a case of we always teach what we most need to learn ourselves.
Sure.
So I was very attracted to the whole marketing, sales, business growth aspect because I was so terrible at it for 3 years. And I realized I had to become a student of this. I had to master this. And about 3 years later, 2006, 2007, I had mastered it. I had some big corporate clients like QVC that's here in our neighborhood in Philadelphia, Microsoft, some big banks, Merrill Lynch, IBM, big corporate training contracts. Other friends and consultants would come to me and say, David, how do you do that marketing? How do you get these big corporate contracts? How does this work? And, can we have breakfast? Can we have lunch? Can we have coffee? So I ended up having a lot of breakfast, lunch, coffee with these people. No idea, no inclination to get money for this in any way, shape, or form. There was good people asking good questions. And I said, sure, I'll tell you. And I gave them all the advice, all the tricks, all the strategies, everything. A friend of mine who's still a good friend to this day, who's a career consultant, he stops me mid-sentence because he was one of the folks that was asking to pick my brain. He says, you should do this for a living. I said, I should do what for a living? Have coffee, eat breakfast, that's a living? He says, no. You should be giving advice to people like me, consultants, trainers, speakers, business book authors. And I laughed at him, Chris. I said, that's a ridiculous idea. All you people are broke because I was broke early on. I said, no thanks. I'm going back to my big corporate consulting and corporate training contracts. But then here was the pivotal moment. The pivotal moment was when I had a $10,000 gig. This was 2008. $10,000 was serious money in 2008. $10,000 program. I walk into the training room and everyone is sitting there like this with their arms crossed, the grumpy faces.
Mandatory, right?
Mandatory. My boss made me be here. They were prisoners, right? Like, okay, tough guy, tell me what's worth, me not being on the phones for a day to sit here and waste time with you. So they were just a horrible, horrible group. And I had this flash in my mind that I am in the wrong room with the wrong people for the wrong reason, talking about the wrong topic. And I was having much more fun coaching and advising the consultants and the speakers and the trainers over all those breakfasts, lunches, and coffees. That was literally the moment that I started to dial back my corporate work and started to do what I'm doing today, fast forward 12 years since 2008, that I'm working with speakers and thought leaders and consultants and coaches who have something to say or something to sell. They want to monetize it. They want to get more clients, make more money, and have more fun.
Okay. Awesome. Well, I think, what is it? Steve Jobs is basically saying, like, talking about the difference between doing what you do and doing what you love. And the people that have really crushed it in this world found a way to do what they love.
Right.
So you can wake up one day and, you know what? Anytime the word mandatory is like, I don't know how to describe it other than every time I've seen that, it's just like optimism cancer. It's just like, literally, it's...
For sure. Well, I have a story about that as well.
Yeah.
So I start this business, and this was actually when I was still back in the struggling phase. And we had a dinner with some other folks. And many of these folks were corporate folks, used to kind of the day job and the paycheck. But we had one person there who was a very, very successful New York City chiropractor and had built her practice from zero to multi-millions of dollars. And everyone is beating up on me. I can't believe you left that job. You had a 6-figure job with bonuses and stock options. And how in the world will you get clients? And this is a terrible idea. And everyone is beating up on me at this dinner. And then one woman who's kind of the naysayer says, how in the world will you get clients? And my chiropractor friend, almost under her breath in a stage whisper, says, one client at a time. And I said, Lisa, what did you say? She says, you're going to do this. You're going to be great at it, but you're going to build it one client at a time. And that was the voice of reason, and that was the voice of encouragement. And gosh darn it, she was right.
Sure.
She was right. So and because I was the biggest naysayer, right? Going, oh no, that's never going to work, and those people are broke, and how in the world? No.
Yeah.
But I think you're right. It's about optimism versus pessimism, and doing what the world says you should do versus where your real skill and talent and passion is pointing you.
So when you think about the growth of your company, was there any point in it where the curve started to get a little more hockey stick shaped?
Yes. And this is, again, a self-limiting belief that I think a lot of solopreneurs or even small company owners suffer with. I thought I was a great practitioner of the business. I did not think I was going to be a good leader or manager. I did not want to have people problems. So what that means is I did not want to have people.
Gotcha.
So I was the lone wolf. The hockey stick happened when I said, you know what? I need some help. And there's a great story here too. I was at a networking event, and a good friend of mine says, let me introduce you to the caterer. The caterer is a brilliant marketer. He's a brilliant entrepreneur. He's a great guy. His name is Mario. So he takes me over. Mario, this is my friend David. David, this is my friend Mario. Now, Mario's in the middle of doing this event. So the dishes are flying left and right. The sternos are going. He's talking to his staff. I know I just have 30 seconds with this guy. And I said, Mario, my friend Scott says you're a brilliant entrepreneur. I know you're super busy right now. What is the biggest lesson that you've learned? And Mario holds his arms out like this. And I'm thinking, okay, Mario, what does this mean? He says, a long time ago, I realized I go 3 feet to my left and 3 feet to my right. If my business is going to be bigger than that, I need other people.
Wow.
And that was like mic drop moment, like, and I started hiring other people. And then the more I hired other people, and some of these people are employees and some are contractors and some are 1099 and some are part-time, some are full-time. But that was a game changer.
Sure.
Because then I realized that this business could be bigger and should be bigger to serve more people, to do more good in the world. I need more people on my crew.
Sure.
I need more people. So it's not just me being chief cook and bottle washer, that I can now start to delegate, outsource, simplify. The most powerful words in entrepreneurship is when you start to build a team and there's all kinds of problems, or hey, we should look at this technology, or how does this work, or we're trying to build this thing. I let you figure that out. 6 words, the most powerful words that a business owner, CEO, or entrepreneur. Empower your people to do the work that you need to be done. You don't need to be the smartest person in the room. I would say my business started to hockey stick when I realized that I was not the smartest person in the room, nor should I be.
Sure. There's a couple different factors that you were talking about here, and I don't want to spend too much time on them, but you started to talk about niches and riches. That's the phrase that I always use. So at this point, you have your business, you're expanding to more people. Did you already figure out that you needed to be in certain niches, or did that come later?
That came later. And so my first book, which is called Do It Marketing, because our company's called Do It Marketing, that was a general small business marketing book. And I'll tell you, the reaction that got, I got calls and emails and notes from all over the country. I had a steel rack manufacturer in Chicago email me, says, David, you have written the handbook for steel rack manufacturers. And I'm like, wow, okay, thanks. I had a yarn store in Vermont email me, David, you have written the marketing Bible for every yarn store in the country. I was like, okay, thanks. I had real estate agents.
And steel.
Yeah, exactly.
Thank you.
I had real estate agents. Everything. Yarn, steel, real estate, candy. So none of these people were people that I wanted to do consulting work with, right? I wasn't working with industrial companies. I wasn't working with retail companies. I was always working with thought-leading executives and entrepreneurs. So I realized I had sort of a foreground-background disconnect, that the foreground was the book, and the book did really, really well, and it sold many, many thousands of copies. But at the same time, it wasn't a direct connect to the business that I wanted. So the book was broad, and my business was narrow. With the new book, the Do It Speaking book, which is really written for executives and entrepreneurs who want to borrow plays from the playbook of the paid professional speaker and use speaking as the ultimate marketing tool and the ultimate personal brand builder and the ultimate one-to-many sales platform, this now is 100% aligned with my back-end business. So the front end is narrow, specific, niche, people who want to deploy a speaking strategy to grow their business. And then the back end, so our coaching team, our consulting work, our corporate training is all about working with executives who want to deploy the same speaking strategy that we talk about in the book. So that took me 6 years, Chris. 2013 is when the Do It Marketing book came out, and I had broad front end, very narrow back end. Now we have laser-focused front end, laser-focused back end. And I think that also is part of our growth, is that now we are the go-to experts in this particular kind of marketing.
That's awesome. Very cool. Very cool. Now, let's talk a little bit about the first book. It says here that on this book, you're published by HarperCollins.
Yes.
Very, very cool. Was the first book published by them as well?
The first book was actually Amicom, which is the American Management Association's publishing division.
Yep.
So they have Brian Tracy, they have a whole bunch of other people there. HarperCollins actually bought Amicom while my proposal was on my acquisition editor's desk.
Wow.
So she says, I have good news and I have bad news. I said, okay, lay it on me. She says, well, the good news is we're going to publish your book. The bad news is it's not going to be Amicom because there is no more Amicom. It's HarperCollins, and it's going to add a couple months to the lead time because we're just shifting things over, et cetera, et cetera. So it was actually great. Amicom was really great to work with because they were a smaller, still major New York publisher, but smaller. So a little bit less bureaucracy, a little bit quicker response time. HarperCollins team has been also fantastic. Obviously, as the world's largest business book publisher, and actually one of the world's largest publishers, period, a little bit more bureaucratic, a few more layers of talking to people, but still super responsive and super supportive. You hear all kinds of, authors often complain about, oh, my publisher is so terrible, my publisher is awful.
Opposite?
It's the opposite. It's just a little bit of a different style between Amicom and HarperCollins.
So do you pitch your book idea and it's not written, or is it finished and then you present it? What's that process like?
The first, actually both books, we did a proposal, and so literary agent pitches. So for executives and entrepreneurs who want to embrace thought leadership through a book, best thing to do is get a literary agent. Best way to get a literary agent is to ask an author who has a literary agent for an introduction. So someone that you already know and someone who recognizes and respects your work. That's how I did it. So Gene Marks, are you familiar with Gene? Here in the Philly area, he runs the Marks Group.
Okay.
He'd be a great guest also, by the way.
Oh, wow.
Wink, wink, nudge, nudge. So I knew that Gene had 5 traditionally published books. And Gene and I are pals, and I know his work, and he knows my work, and so we trust each other on that level. I said, Gene, do you love your literary agent? And he says, yeah, he's a really great guy. Would you like an introduction? Yes. Now, couple things to notice for folks that want to adopt this particular thought leadership strategy. Don't ask a stranger. Don't ask someone that doesn't know you from Adam or Eve. Ask someone who knows you, likes you, trusts you, and believes in you, because when you get an introduction to their literary agent, it is one of their most trusted relationships.
Wow.
So you really want to do this with someone who you already have a good friendship, a good relationship with.
Interesting.
But that's the shortcut. And so I got introduced through Gene Marks to my agent, whose name is Mike Snell. Mike and I had a phone conversation. He said, send me a proposal. He sent me some guidelines. He actually worked me through 5 different versions of this proposal. I sent in version 1, not good enough. I sent in version 2, you got to change this, got to change that, cut this, add this. Literally 5 versions.
And this is the proposal. This isn't even.
This is the proposal.
We haven't gotten
right.
the book yet.
Haven't even gotten the book yet. 5th proposal, he says, this is great. Turns it around, he sells it in a week.
Oh, that's awesome.
To Amicom. So he knew what he was talking about. He knew what they wanted to see, how they wanted to see it. And then with the second proposal for the Do It Speaking book, it was a much faster process because I knew kind of what he wanted, the format he wanted it in. And then he was able to sell it to HarperCollins. I think it took maybe 2 weeks instead of 1 week. So a little bit tougher in 2019 is when we submitted it. And then 2020 obviously is when it came out.
That's great. That's great. I mean, it's as legit as it comes. I did not get to finish all of it, so you sent me a copy, and so I started to get into it. I right out of the bat, I thought it was really cool how you started to talk about public speaking is the new. It's not. I'm sorry. Public speaking was social media before social media.
That's
was
right.
Social media.
That's right. The original social media.
Yeah.
Right, because people would judge you on just like they do in digital marketing, they judge you on the quality of the content and the ideas and the persuasiveness and the value of what you have to say, or what you do on your blog, or what you do in your Facebook Lives, or what you do on video. But the whole idea of selling ideas, whether you're selling ideas to a prospective client, whether you're selling ideas to your corporate team, whether you're selling ideas to investors, whether you're selling ideas face-to-face at a conference, video, webinar, all of these are speaking strategies. And so building up that muscle is really, really important to be a thought leader today.
So we're talking about public speaking. So what do you think makes a great marketing strategy when you tie public speaking together with your marketing strategy? How does it combine, and what do you think your strategic value is for that?
Fantastic question. I talk about a 3PR game plan, and 3PR is an acronym for personalized professional public relations. And there's 3 legs on that stool, Chris. Leg number 1 is speaking, and it's specifically speaking to targeted groups of your buyers, of your prospects, of that buyer persona type of person that you want to get in front of. So speaking is great because speaking is like a test drive. They get to see you in action. They get to sample your best thinking, your best ideas, strategies, methodology, training, tools, whatever you want to get across in that 30 to 60 minute presentation. The second leg of the stool is publishing. And I don't necessarily mean publishing a book. I mean any sort of publishing a blog, publishing articles in trade magazines or association publications. That really cements your ideas. That puts your thought leadership in writing. And then the third leg of the stool, of course, is digital marketing. And digital marketing or social media marketing, that enhances your reach. That gives you a broader distribution channel for your expertise. So to summarize the 3PR strategy, I tell people that speaking raises your visibility, publishing raises your credibility, and the digital marketing or the social media raises your shareability. And if you enhance those 3 things, visibility, credibility, and shareability, you win because you're going to stand head and shoulders above any competitor.
I like it. Now, there are certain mediums that you're seeing that are, obviously we're talking about a major content saturation in this world, meaning like you're not the first person that's saying to do this. And one of the jokes that we have is creating great content is one thing, but promoting content is a whole nother thing. What are your recommendations for promotion after you've created great content?
Well, I think one thing that will totally separate people from the crowd is consistency. Because a lot of people are producing a ton of content, right? You can look at all the stats about how many blogs are published every second, how many videos are uploaded to YouTube every second. But a consistently showing up in front of your target market by offering value and inviting engagement. And I don't mean invite engagement like, hey, buy our stuff. Engagement can be baby steps. It can be micro commitments. It could be like, share, subscribe, download, click here. What do you think? Post a comment. So having a two-way dialogue with your marketplace is also really important when it comes to your content marketing. But what we talk about in the Do It Speaking book is how to take that into 3D, where we are humanizing your brand. And I think we're also living, Chris, in a world where personal brands are more important than company brands. Whether you look at this with giant corporations and the millennial generation really wanting to trust the CEO and the top leadership team, if there isn't that trust, if there isn't that respect, they probably are not going to want to work there. We're living in a world where leadership really needs to become thought leadership. So becoming the face and the voice of your brand and the face and the voice of your company is more important than ever, because people don't necessarily buy your products and services. What they buy is who you are and what you stand for. And one of the best ways to convey that is through speaking-driven strategies, both offline, at conferences, at events, at trade shows, at locally, regionally, nationally, maybe even internationally. And certainly online. A speaking-driven strategy is shows like this that we're doing right now that builds your thought leadership and it builds my thought leadership. It's video, it is webinars, it is Zoom info sessions where it's a roundtable conversation, or it's a CEO roundtable that you might do via Zoom to gather the leaders in your industry who you want to do business with. So I think you have to take this above and beyond the one-way data dump of content and make it a consistent stream of high-value conversations that you're inviting people to participate in your thought leadership.
Yeah, I like that. Now, what do you do when you run into really great business leaders, but they don't view themselves as thought leaders?
We typically beat them up and tie them in a chair and then smack them around until they come around. Well, it's funny. I think there's two reasons that happens. Reason number one is genuine humility. That, I don't know any more than most of my competitors, and we don't want to position ourselves as snooty or arrogant or better than anyone. And it's not about being better; it's about being different. It's about what does your company and what does your team do better, faster, smarter, cooler than the competition? How are they different? What are your points of distinction? And when we work with clients, we often say, what are your indisputable points of proof? So how many clients have you worked with? What awards have you won? What results have you generated? What, show me dollars, numbers, percentages, hours, whatever it is that your metrics are that you help your clients with. What are those indisputable points of proof? Start talking about those. So that's reason number one, is that they're not really in touch with the value that they truly deliver. The second reason is sort of false humility, where a CEO or a president or business owner might say, well, I don't want to be in the spotlight. It's about the team. We have a VP of marketing. We have a VP of sales. We're going to let her handle that. We're going to let him handle that. It's not about me. But if you're the CEO, the president, or the owner of a company, like it or not, it is about you. Whether we're talking about investors, whether we're talking about the media, whether we're talking about prospects and customers, they want to hear from the top banana. They want to hear from the top dog. So really embracing your role as thought leader in chief is very, very important to the trust and the attractiveness of your brand.
Now, does your book coach people on how to be more dynamic, or is that something that these are the tools that you can use if you have these traits, or are you finding people that are in the middle and it's like, you know what, if you could stretch yourself a little bit more, you can be this person that is winning in this space?
That's such a great question. So people often ask me, David, should I be going to Toastmasters? Should I work on my presentation skills? How do I stand? What do I do with my hands? What about my voice? I don't like the way I look on video. Any of these things. I say you only need two things to be a successful speaker from a presentation skills standpoint. Number one, you have to have some expertise.
Yep.
Number two, you have to deliver that with enthusiasm and with excitement. No matter how dry and boring you think your topic is, if you love it, if you're enthusiastic about it, if you can bring some energy to it, people will buy the energy.
Sure.
People will buy your enthusiasm and go, wow, I never thought about stamp collecting, but this guy loves stamp collecting. I never thought about environmental engineering and why that's important, but wow, this woman loves her environmental engineering ideas, and they buy our enthusiasm. And so people say, well, do I need a voice coach? Do I need to go through 3 years of Toastmasters? No, you don't. I mean, all of those things might help, but the really great speakers are unpolished in their quote-unquote presentation skills, and all they do is they let their enthusiasm, they let their energy and excitement show through.
I mean, I almost find when I run into this roadblock, because obviously we sell something very similar, what I always find is that, you know what, when you have some when you have certain things like that and you're not as polished, you actually look a little bit more human. And our expectations are very different on your homepage video than they are on your thought leadership in your blog. So like, it's actually, if you come off too polished, it almost looks like you're trying to sell them. When you come off who you are and it's not perfect, it's more authentic. And because it's more authentic, it usually works better, but it usually people find you more endearing.
Absolutely right. Well, it's not only more endearing, it's more approachable.
Sure.
Right? Nobody likes perfection. If you look too polished, too canned, it actually has an opposite effect, that it will repel people. I think you bring up a really great point, that you have to humanize your presence. I sometimes talk about humanize and humorize, that using a little bit of humor, not about telling jokes, but really being authentic, being humorous, being humble, being a human being. Don't worry about being polished, and for heaven's sakes, never, ever, ever memorize anything. I do webinars, none of it's memorized. I do thousands of hours of video, none of it's memorized. I literally, Chris, I have a Post-it note, I've got 4 to 6 bullets, and I stick that right up in front of the camera, and I just riff, and I rant, and there's pauses, and there's jokes, and there's some self-deprecating humor, and people go, I love your videos. How do you do those videos? I say, well, I'm just me. Sure. I'm just me. And that's the other thing, because sometimes people look at folks like me with a big voice or a big personality, and they say, well, I can't do that, David. I don't have a big personality. I don't make funny faces on camera. You don't need to do that. I do that because that's who I am. So I take my personality, add 20%. You can have a very engaging, very fun personality and be fairly quiet. You can have a very engaging, very value-rich conversation, and you can keep your tone fairly low. You don't need to have this big, booming voice and lots of crazy energy and blah, 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 blah. So it's you plus 20%. Whatever you have, whatever you bring to the table, dry humor, crazy humor, soft-spoken, loud-spoken, doesn't matter. It's you plus 20%. The 20% comes from adding that layer of enthusiasm. And let people see how much you love your work. Let people see how much you love your clients. Yep. Let people see how much you love your team. And that's going to win them over.
And I think it's funny because I'm a big Tim Ferriss guy. I'm a big Tony Robbins guy. Now, they're friends with each other, and Tony Robbins often goes on Tim Ferriss's show. Now, if you watch them independent, I never look at Tim Ferriss as a guy that doesn't have that dynamic personality. But then you put him next to Tony Robbins, and it's a massive mismatch. But what I'm saying is that Tony Robbins isn't for everybody, and Tim Ferriss isn't for everybody.
Right.
So like what I'm finding is that, you know what, if you be you, I promise you this is a big enough world out there that there's going to be people that there's a lot of flavors of ice cream. You know what I mean?
Absolutely right. And there's a lot of flavors of thought leadership.
Yeah, exactly.
And I think people need to claim their slice of that pie.
Yeah. Yeah. Very cool. Very cool. So if someone wanted to work with you, where do they start? Like, what's the process like?
As far as how to sort of start nosing around our world?
Yeah. So, I mean, you have Do It Marketing, and then you're coaching and speaking. If they called you up, what do they say the process like? What's the beginning? Where does it start? What's the first step?
Well, I think as far as just getting people's feet wet, the first place to go is our website, which is doitmarketing.com. If they want our free training, our current free on-demand training, it's doitmarketing.com/webinar. And the process looks like we hop on the phone, we figure out where you are, where you want to go, what your goals are as far as your business, as far as speaking, because there's really 2 branches of speaking that we talk about in the Do It Speaking book. One is lead generating speaking, where you don't care about getting a speaking fee, and the other is revenue generating speaking, where obviously you do care about getting a speaking fee. They're both great, and they both have their place. What we would do on that initial conversation is we would say, well, Chris, do you want to get paid to speak, or do you want to get paid because you spoke? So some people say, well, you know what? I run a big accounting firm, and typical client might be worth between $30,000 and $50,000 a year to us. You put me in front of 25 CEOs, I'll get 3 of those folks as clients.
Yeah.
So if I walk out of that room with $90,000 of business, do I really care if I got a $5,000 or $10,000 speaking fee on the front end? No, I got a $90,000 speaking fee because I just grabbed 3 new clients out of that high probability audience. So I think being clear on the goals is, why are we speaking? What ideas are we putting out into the marketplace with the speaking strategy? And then we have a variety of ways that people can work with us, from mentoring to private coaching to corporate workshops. We also do a speaker video summit out in Burbank, California. We rent out a big, beautiful theater, and then we do a TED-style video shoot where people get 5 to 7 minutes of footage of them on a big stage with testimonials, with talking head interviews, with all kinds of other things.
Very cool.
Intermixed there. So whether it is the strategy, whether it's the coaching, the consulting, the corporate workshops, or the video summit, we have a variety of things depending on where people are coming into this. What we also found, Chris, is a lot of people come in with different levels of experience, expertise, assets, background, goals. Some are already up and running in a thought leadership business, and they're looking to go to the next level. Some people are literally starting at square zero, and they have nothing, like no website, no topic, no speech, no thought leadership, and everything needs to be kind of crystallized and created from the ground up. And we've worked with folks all the way from fresh off the boat, just leaving their corporate VP job, all the way to members of the National Speakers Association Speaker Hall of Fame.
Wow.
So there's no such thing as too early, and there's no such thing as too advanced, and we help folks at every step of their speaking-driven journey.
So let's say hypothetically you have this polished, process, and everything works out really well. How do you find the speaking opportunities once you've done that? Is that a part of your process as well?
It is. So we show people how to do research, both online and offline. We show people how to have exploratory conversations, fact-finding conversations, basically firsthand research with their target market, specifically about the pains, problems, heartaches, headaches. Because what you don't want to do is you don't want to have someone build out this entire speaking strategy, go out into the marketplace and realize, oh, no one's going to pay for that.
Yeah.
Nobody wants that. No, the problem I thought they had, they don't see as a problem. Mm-hmm. So like in most marketing, you don't want to make 2 sales every time. I have to sell you on you have a problem, and then I have to sell you on I've got the best solution, Chris. Mm-hmm. You got to buy my solution. So the great David Ogilvy said, if you want to sell fire extinguishers, you first have to show the fire. So we have our folks do an initial research, vetting, and validating step to make sure that they're dialed into the right kinds of problems, the right kinds of clients, the right kinds of target market or niche that they want to serve, and really validate that those people recognize and acknowledge the problem, and it's an urgent, pervasive, expensive problem that they are already seeking solutions for. Because then it's much, much easier to position your thought leadership in the crosshairs of where they're already spending money, already looking for solutions.
Gotcha. And do you find that paying for your opportunities to be in front of certain audiences, like paying for breakout sessions and stuff like that, do you find that, I'm sure that each scenario or each situation is different, but my point is that are you looking for opportunities where you can speak, but you got to pay for that opportunity, or do you help them find opportunities where, obviously you're finding opportunities where they're going to pay you to speak, but let's pretend you're talking about that latter individual is the accountant who got more clients from speaking. Do you find that you actually have to pay for those opportunities? So
I have a very strong opinion on this.
Yep.
And here's what I say to people. Because there is a huge pay-to-play speaking
that's
venue.
A good way to put it.
Yeah.
Yep.
So pay-to-play is the cancer on the speaking industry.
Wow.
And that is just one man's opinion, but it's been vetted and validated after working with hundreds and hundreds of clients that the payoff that you get is rarely the payoff that they promise. Oh, it's going to be a target-rich group. It's all CEOs, Chris. You walk in, there's 3 CEOs, and there's like 50 mid-level people who have no decision-making capability, and they're just basically sitting there because they want the free lunch or the free trip or whatever it is. In rare cases, and mostly on the national level, not so much the local or state or city level, if there's a pay-to-play, a huge bunch of pay-to-play opportunities at these big giant tech conferences. Mm-hmm. If you have a strategy that what do you do before the event, what do you do at the event, what's the call to action, and you have a very robust follow-up strategy for lead generation to get more appointments, more demos, more meetings, more sales, more strategic partners, unless you have that full-blown strategy. If you do, that pay-to-play opportunity might be great. If you don't, it's just a huge waste of money. Wow. And for most entrepreneurial speakers or most executives at small to medium-sized companies, you're playing with fire because the big guys have this figured out. The guys at Salesforce.com, the guys at Google, the gals at Google, the folks at the giant tech companies, Amazon, etc., they have this figured out. They know pay-to-play. They know which venues are worth it to get in front of that audience. They're not guessing. They're not throwing darts. Wow. I know that obviously your firm is very data-driven, so you would not guide your clients into some kind of crazy, tilting at windmills kind of thing. But generally speaking, if you're not educated about what that pay-to-play opportunity really is, it's going to be a waste of money.
Yeah, I mean, that's always the pinch that I run into. Like, I always dream we do our presentation and we work super, super, super hard on the presentation, the slide deck, what we say, how we say it. And I'm always dreaming of, hey, you know what? I'd love to be able to give this presentation in front of a considerable, like a larger audience or a larger group.
Right.
It has to be the right group, obviously. So then I'm always intrigued by like, hey, do you want a breakout session? Well, it's going to cost like between $5,000 and $10,000. I'm like, if I get a client and you're in our space, you're talking about margins of maybe 15 to, let's say hypothetically it's 15 to 25%.
Yeah.
It's going to take a lot of money to make that $10,000.
Right.
So I'm going to need 6 clients from this speech.
Yeah. Well, and you make a great distinction. A lot of people say, hey, I'm selling something for $10,000. If I pay $10,000, I get 100% ROI, but it's not. It's about the profit.
Yes.
It's not about the revenue. It's about the profit from that client. You can make the revenue back maybe in a couple of deals, but you will not make the profit back unless, like you say, it is 3x or 5x or 6x that number for your return on investment.
Yeah. I feel like we're going to have another conversation because I feel like you got way more. You have way more to say than we have the time to do. So if you were to think of one gem, one thing that you would probably want to tell your target audience to say, hey, you know what? If you gained one thing from me today, here it is. What do you got?
I think having a speaking strategy is a vital part of your online and offline marketing game plan. I would say start small. I would say don't feel you have to have this all figured out on day one. Like most people we work with, they start to crawl before they walk, before they run, before they fly. So take it step by step. Don't try and figure it out on your own. Tap into some mentors and some resources. Maybe buy the Do It Speaking book as a first step. And take it easy on yourself because the journey's definitely worth the trip, but it's also a marathon. It's not something that you just snap your fingers and boom, I'm an instant thought leader. I'm an in-demand speaker on the speaking circuit. So take it one step at a time and get some smart help when you can.
I mean, it's awesome when you see people do a TED Talk and it totally changed their lives, but the TED Talk wasn't their first talk.
Right.
You know what I mean? Yep. So we just spent about 40 minutes with David Newman. This is his book again. I highly recommend you get it. You can buy it obviously online or you're on Amazon.
Yes.
Yep. You can get it in Kindle format. There's a variety of different ways you can get it. I highly recommend it. I've already started it and I'm really excited to tell you what I think. But thanks again for being on the show. And if you have any other questions, how do they reach out to you again? What's the best way to do it?
Best way is to pop on the website, doitmarketing.com. We have a blog, we have a podcast, we have all kinds of free resources there. Splash around on doitmarketing.com and you'll find some great ways to get started with us.
All right. Well, thanks again, David, for being on the show. And that's going to wrap us up for today. What I'd like you to do now is kind of sit back and watch our 5-minute marketing segment. Thanks a lot. Hello, I'm Chris Carr with Fairtech, and this is your Marketing Minute. One of the biggest challenges we have as an agency is working with companies who have worked with another marketing company in the past. And usually what happens is they feel either very jaded or they don't trust the system. The number one complaint that we hear is that their previous marketing company did not get to know who they are, what they do, their message, their mission, or anything that's going to be related to the positive growth that they were hoping their company would achieve. So the one thing that we recommend is that when you pick a marketing agency, make sure that they do a gap assessment right in the beginning of the process. A good gap assessment takes anywhere between 4 to 8 weeks. And usually what we're going to be talking about here is they're going to take significant time to take a deep dive into your company to figure out where are the holes or the gaps in your processes. What are the things that you're doing to communicate your message? And how does it compare with the statistics of that industry? What is the system that they're using to generate leads, nurture leads, and convert leads? And how does that tie in with your previous results or your previous approach? A gap assessment is the cornerstone of making your marketing work in the long haul. We've worked with clients in the past and they said, you know what, we don't really want to spend the extra money and time in the beginning to do a gap assessment. And then a year into the process, what they do is they find out that, you know what, I really wish that we would have taken the time in the beginning to get this done right. So I highly recommend that you look into a gap assessment at the start of every campaign. A good gap assessment is also going to look at a variety of different factors, such as how does your keywords and your SEO approach rank with your competition? How is your brand impacting your market, and what kind of market penetration do you have? How does it compare with your competitors, and what is their global reach, their paid reach? How does your messaging differ from theirs? And finally, if you have a lot of competition that are investing in pay-per-click advertising or just SEO, it's really important to understand what your competitors' digital approach is so that you can marry the best parts of their approach to yours. The number one thing that you're looking for in a gap assessment is trying to understand what is a 3 to 5 year roadmap and how do you systematically get there year by year, KPI by KPI, and goal by goal. At the end of the day, if your marketing company cannot clearly represent and show their ROI, you gotta pick somebody else. So my message is simple. If you're working with an existing agency, make sure that a gap assessment is part of your process. If you are looking for a new agency, make sure that that agency is going to take the time and energy to understand who you are, what you do, and the message you're trying to achieve, and how does it compare to your goals.